The survey vessel Odyssey was never meant to make history. Its mission was simple: test the experimental jump drive across a controlled distance within the solar system, record the data, and return home. The crew, a collection of scientists, engineers, and a few military observers, expected nothing more than a routine trial. Instead, when the drive activated, space itself seemed to fold in ways their simulations had not predicted. In the blink of an eye, Earth's sun was gone from their star maps. Familiar constellations vanished. The vessel emerged in a sector of space, dense with signals, structures, and traffic, unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. They were surrounded by an array of ships, massive in scale, cruising through the void with an ease that made humanity's proud Odyssey look like a child's toy boat in the middle of an ocean. Commander Elena Ramirez, who had led exploratory missions on Earth and Luna, stood at the forward viewport with her arms crossed. Her crew shifted nervously, waiting for orders. Instead of panic, she simply said, "Log everything. We might not get this chance again." Her calmness was contagious. Instead of fearing the unknown, the crew leaned into their work, cataloging ships, architecture, and energy signatures. For the alien vessels nearby, however, the scene was surreal. Patrol ships from the Valerian Empire were the first to detect the human vessel. Their captains were used to smaller civilizations trembling at the sight of Imperial ships, surrendering before a single weapon was fired. Yet here was an unfamiliar craft, its crew radiating no distress, calmly transmitting signals that requested docking protocols and trade regulations as if they were visiting a friendly port. When a translation channel opened, the humans introduced themselves with quiet confidence. "This is the Earth vessel Odyssey. We request standard navigation data, local safety regulations, and communication frequencies." The message was delivered in a tone that implied this was all expected. Routine, even. The aliens exchanged uneasy glances. New species were supposed to beg for survival, not act as though entering the Empire's core systems was a simple formality. Among the crew, Dr. Malcolm Chen, the ship's lead scientist, chuckled to himself. "We've stumbled into something big," he remarked to his colleagues, "but they're reacting to us like we should be afraid. I don't think they understand that humans live through uncertainty every day." To him, this was simply another puzzle to solve, no different than deciphering climate patterns or surviving on hostile planets. Meanwhile, the Valerian patrol relayed urgent messages to their command. Reports spoke of a new race appearing from nowhere, unshaken by the Empire's power. Some speculated the humans were an advance fleet from a rival empire. Others suspected cloaked warships must be nearby, ready to strike. The thought that the humans were simply as calm as they appeared was unthinkable. On the Odyssey, the crew began sharing meals, cracking jokes, and keeping logs as if this accidental voyage were just another extended mission. Commander Ramirez reminded them that fear, clouded judgment, and history favored those who acted with composure. They were explorers first, and explorers recorded what they found. Unknown to the humans, their composure was already sowing ripples throughout the Empire. For a civilization built on hierarchy and dominance, fearlessness was a language reserved for the mighty. That a small vessel from an unknown world carried itself with such ease was, to the Valerians, a sign of dangerous confidence. As the first day in this new region of space came to an end, the Odyssey's crew reviewed their findings. Vast trade, routes, military patrols, orbital stations larger than any human city, all cataloged with precision. Ramirez closed her report with a single line that would later echo across Earth's history. "We have encountered an empire. They expect us to bow. We will treat them as equals." The jump had been an accident. What came next would be anything but. The Valerian Empire prided itself on centuries of control. New species encountered along their frontier usually followed. The same predictable pattern: initial panic, desperate offers of submission, and eventual assimilation into the empire's hierarchy. By the time word of the humans reached the local sector governor, the expectation was clear. Another insignificant civilization had stumbled into the empire's path. What unsettled them was the tone of the reports. The human crew displayed no fear, no awe, and no reverence for the empire's power. Governor Talvek, a seasoned Valerian official, leaned back in his chair as he reviewed the transmission logs. The humans had requested docking rights at a neutral station, treating it as if it were the most natural thing in the galaxy. Their voices had carried no trembling hesitation, no supplication. Instead, they sounded like merchants arriving at a marketplace they had always known existed. Talvek narrowed his eyes. "Confidence can be a weapon," he muttered to his aides, "and I do not yet know if they are wielding it intentionally." Meanwhile, aboard the Odyssey, the crew marveled at the information they were gathering. Ensign Noor Patel had been tasked with deciphering navigation maps broadcast by the local channels. She was stunned by the sheer scale of the Empire's territory, thousands of systems linked by intricate trade routes and patrol networks. Yet instead of shrinking before the enormity of what they had found, she simply grinned. "It's like stumbling into a larger version of Earth's old empires," she said. "History repeats, just on a cosmic scale." Commander Elena Ramirez understood the importance of perception. To their hosts, the humans must project composure. She briefed the crew daily, reminding them that panic would only weaken their position. "We don't act like newcomers," she told them during one meeting. "We act like professionals who belong here. The moment we look like prey, someone will treat us that way." The crew nodded, absorbing her words with the same discipline, as explorers on a dangerous frontier. At the docking station assigned to them, the humans were greeted by Valerian officials dressed in ceremonial armor. The reception was designed to impress, filled with banners, ritual gestures, and displays of authority. But when Ramirez and her officers stepped onto the platform, they returned the greetings with polite nods and firm handshakes. No one flinched, no one bowed. Instead, they asked direct questions about trade regulations, fueling prices, and diplomatic protocols, as if they were at a standard interstellar summit. The Valerian delegation exchanged nervous glances. To them, this lack of reverence bordered on defiance. Yet the humans spoke with courtesy, never hostile, never arrogant, simply confident. The subtle difference unsettled the Empire's representatives more than outright aggression would have. Aggression was predictable. Calm defiance was dangerous. Back on Earth, news of the accidental jump spread quickly through secure channels. Governments, scientists, and military leaders debated the implications. Some argued for caution, fearing humanity was unprepared to face a civilization of such scale. Others, inspired by the Odyssey's crew, urged boldness. "If we act like equals," one advisor remarked, "we may be treated as such. If we act like children, we'll be dismissed, or worse." Dr. Malcolm Chen, still aboard the Odyssey, summarized the situation in his daily log. "We are a small fish in a vast ocean, but the ocean does not yet know our depth. To them, our calmness is confusing. To us, it is survival." His words captured the essence of humanity's strategy. They could not match the Empire's fleets or stations, but they could control perception, shaping how they were seen in these critical first encounters. As the first week unfolded, whispers spread through the docking station. Other species under the Empire's dominion noticed the humans, observed their mannerisms, and began to wonder. Here was a species that spoke without fear in the Empire's heart, a species that carried themselves as if they had faced empires before. To the oppressed, it was a spark of curiosity. To the rulers, it was a seed of suspicion. When Commander Ramirez finally received an invitation to meet Governor Talvek in person, she understood the stakes. This was no longer a matter of Exploration. It was diplomacy on a knife's edge. She gathered her officers, their uniforms crisp, their faces composed. "We're going to walk into their halls," she said, "and we're going to act like we belong there, because if we don't believe it, neither will they." The Odyssey had stumbled into the Empire by accident, but now every step was deliberate, and with each deliberate step, the humans deepened the mystery of who they were and what they represented. Governor Talvek was no stranger to first contact. Across his decades of service, he had presided over the assimilation of 8 emerging species. Every one of them had walked into his chambers wide-eyed and trembling, eager to appease the Empire that controlled their fate. He had expected the same from the humans, perhaps with a touch more stubbornness. After all, they had already shown an unusual steadiness in their first interactions. But as the chamber doors opened, what entered was something far stranger than defiance. Commander Elena Ramirez led her officers with deliberate steps, neither hurried nor hesitant. Their uniforms bore no extravagant design, only functional elegance. To Valerian, eyes accustomed to lavish displays of submission, the simplicity looked almost like arrogance. But the humans' composure was disarming rather than offensive. They looked as though they were here by right, not by indulgence. Talvek studied them closely from his raised platform. His aides had prepared a speech designed to impress, laced with imperial titles and ceremonial demands. But before he could begin, Ramirez extended a hand in greeting, just as she had done at the docking bay. "Governor Talvek," she said evenly, "thank you for receiving us. I hope this will be the beginning of a productive relationship." The chamber fell into silence. None of the other species had ever dared to speak first in these halls, let alone with such composure. Slowly, Talvek rose from his seat, his expression unreadable. He clasped Ramirez's hand, imitating the gesture, though it felt awkward. "You speak boldly, Commander," he said. "Do you know who we are?" Ramirez's eyes flickered with amusement, though her tone remained respectful. "We know enough to recognize an established power when we see one. We also know that every great power values stability, order, and partners who can contribute rather than disrupt." The governor tilted his head. This was not flattery. This was positioning. The humans were presenting themselves not as supplicants, but as peers. He decided to probe further. "And what can a young species like yours possibly contribute to? A galactic order that has endured for millennia?" Dr. Malcolm Chen stepped forward. He was not a soldier, but Ramirez had insisted on his presence. "Perspective," he replied calmly. "We are not new to the idea of empires. On our world, civilizations have risen and fallen countless times. We've seen the dangers of arrogance and the cost of stagnation. We may be small on your scale, but our history has taught us lessons that even large powers sometimes forget." Talvek narrowed his eyes. The answer was bold, but not foolish. There was no mockery, no challenge, only a quiet conviction that unsettled him more than open defiance would have. He shifted his approach. "If you truly understand empires, then you know that survival depends on loyalty. Will your people offer it?" Ramirez held his gaze steadily. "We will offer respect. Loyalty must be earned on both sides." The aides behind Talvek stiffened at what they perceived as insolence, but the governor silenced them with a raised hand. He had seen enough species collapse under the weight of fear. Fear made them predictable. These humans, however, carried no visible fear. That made them dangerous, but also intriguing. After the formal meeting, Talvek summoned his advisors in private. "They do not behave like primitives," he said slowly. "They act as though they have already faced empires greater than ours. Either they are extraordinary pretenders, or they carry truths we do not yet see." His advisors urged caution, some calling for immediate restrictions on human movements, others warning against provoking an unknown force. The debate was heated, but Talvek remained thoughtful. "No," he said finally. "We will watch them. Closely." Meanwhile, word of the audience spread rapidly among the station's inhabitants. Alien merchants whispered of a species that spoke to the governor as if they were equals. Subjugated races passed rumors from ear to ear, marveling at the humans' composure. For many, it was the first spark of curiosity, perhaps even hope, that the Empire's grip was not absolute. On the Odyssey, Ramirez debriefed her crew with quiet satisfaction. "We passed their test today," she told them. "But this is only the beginning. They don't know what to make of us, and that's our strongest position." Chen added his own reflection in the evening log. "We did not flinch. In doing so, we planted a seed. Empires fear the unpredictable, and nothing is more unpredictable than a people who refuse to follow the script." In the shadows of the Empire's halls, something had shifted. The humans had entered by accident, but now they were no longer merely explorers. They were becoming a question the Empire could not easily answer. Governor Talvek had made his decision. The humans would not be openly challenged, at least not yet. Direct confrontation would reveal too much too soon. Instead, he ordered a series of quiet tests designed to expose weakness. If the newcomers were as inexperienced as they claimed, it would not take long for the cracks to show. The first test came in the form of bureaucracy. Imperial clerks were instructed to bury the human delegation under layers of confusing documentation, permits, and compliance forms. Dozens of tablets were delivered to the Odyssey, filled with regulations written in dense legal dialects that even experienced species struggled to understand. It was a tactic used often against fledgling civilizations: suffocate them in red tape until they admitted their inferiority. Yet to the Empire's surprise, the humans did not flinch. Lieutenant Aisha Patel, a linguist and trained diplomat, set up a small team and began dissecting the documents with surgical precision. "We've had bureaucracies too," she remarked dryly as her fingers flew over the interface. "Try dealing with 3 centuries of international trade law back home." Within 2 days, the humans submitted every form correctly, flagged half a dozen contradictions in the Empire's own records, and even proposed simplified alternatives that impressed the lower-level clerks. What was meant to frustrate instead earned them quiet admiration. The second test was more subtle, woven into trade negotiations. Human representatives were offered exchange deals that appeared generous but carried hidden traps, imbalances of resources, exploitative tariffs, or commitments that would leave their supply lines vulnerable. It was a game the Empire had perfected, but Commander Ramirez and Dr. Chen recognized the traps immediately. Chen leaned over the glowing contract during one negotiation. "This looks familiar," he murmured. "It's the same kind of arrangement colonial powers once imposed on weaker nations back on Earth. We know how that story ends." Ramirez smiled faintly, meeting the alien merchant's gaze. "We appreciate the offer," she said, "but fairness is the foundation of any lasting relationship. Surely the Empire doesn't expect partners to prosper on imbalance." By the time the session ended, the humans had not only avoided the trap, but secured a deal that benefited both sides more equitably. To the merchants, who were used to bullying fledgling species into submission, the encounter was unsettling. They could not decide whether the humans were reckless or brilliant. The third test was more dangerous. Imperial security forces staged a routine inspection of the Odyssey, planting minor contraband in hopes of catching the crew off guard. The plan was simple: discover the forbidden item, arrest the officers, and establish dominance through embarrassment. But the humans were not so easily manipulated. When the inspection began, Ramirez allowed the team full access, but kept her crew close at hand, observing every movement. Chief Engineer Marcus Hale spotted the planted device almost immediately. Without hesitation, he documented the moment with his wrist cam and quietly handed it back to the startled inspector. "I think this belongs to you," he said in a voice that carried just enough weight. The inspector retreated quickly, shaken, and the report that reached Talvek was clear. The humans had not only evaded the trap, but revealed they were not easily deceived. Through it all, the humans remained calm. There was no bluster, no displays of anger or outrage. Their composure unsettled the Empire far more than loud resistance ever could. Other species began to notice as well. Whispers spread in the station's markets and mess halls. The humans had beaten the bureaucracy, outmaneuvered the merchants, and embarrassed security. No one had seen such quiet defiance before. Governor Talvek listened to the reports with growing intrigue. "They are not reacting as expected," he told his advisors. "Every move we make, they adapt with ease. It is as if they have rehearsed these challenges before," one aide muttered nervously. "Perhaps they have. Perhaps their history is filled with empires of their own." Talvek considered this in silence. If true, it explained much. The humans were not naive. They were seasoned by centuries of internal struggles, carrying lessons that most young civilizations never had to learn. Back aboard the Odyssey, Ramirez gathered her officers in the briefing room. "They are testing us," she said plainly, "but every test we pass makes them less certain of how to handle us. That uncertainty is our shield." Dr. Chen leaned back, thoughtful. "It won't stop here. The more we unsettle them, the more desperate they'll become to understand us. And when an empire is desperate, it makes mistakes." The crew exchanged quiet nods. They all understood. Each challenge they overcame was not just survival. It was building a reputation. To the Empire, they were no longer an accident that wandered into their borders. They were a mystery wrapped in calm defiance, a species that refused to bow, yet did so without ever raising its voice. And in the heart of the Empire, mysteries had a way of becoming dangerous. The quiet successes of the humans had not gone unnoticed. Whispers spread not only in the bustling halls of the orbital station, but also in the shadowy channels that reported directly to the Empire's intelligence directorate. For centuries, the directorate had relied on subtle infiltration to learn the strengths and weaknesses of other species long before they became threats. Governor Talvek, concerned by the unsettling composure of the humans, made the call. "Send in the Watchers," he ordered. "If we cannot break them with bureaucracy or trade, we will know them through their secrets." Within hours, agents were dispatched. Disguised as traders, clerks, and even casual dock workers, they slipped into the humans' orbit, listening, watching, and probing. To the Empire, this was a well-practiced ritual. No species had ever resisted the quiet knife of intelligence. Yet the humans responded in ways no one expected. On board the Odyssey, Commander Ramirez had long suspected surveillance. She instructed her crew to maintain openness in their routines, never revealing more than they intended. When unfamiliar technicians lingered too long near their systems, Marcus Hale would strike up casual conversations, gently steering them away without force. Dr. Chen, keenly observant, deliberately scattered small fragments of Earth's history in his exchanges, snippets about wars, alliances, and technological leaps, just enough to intrigue but not enough to reveal the full picture. The spies gathered eagerly, piecing together scraps of human history. But as they did, an unsettling narrative began to emerge. Unlike other young species, the humans had not been nurtured under a single guiding empire. Their history was filled with conflict between their own nations, each rising and falling in cycles that mirrored entire galactic empires. The agents read of global wars that scarred continents, of rival ideologies clashing across centuries, and of humanity's survival through near self-destruction. They studied the technological leaps born not from peace, but from necessity. One agent, disguised as a merchant, whispered in his report. Their species has fought wars that consumed more lives than some empires control, and still they endure. If they can survive themselves, what chance does anyone else have? Another report described their resilience in the face of catastrophe, plagues, famines, environmental collapse, each of which could have ended them, yet none had. They treat every disaster as a lesson, the spy noted grimly. They adapt faster than most civilizations evolve. When these reports reached Talvek, he felt a chill unlike any he had known. He had expected tales of weakness and disarray. Instead, what emerged was a portrait of a species forged in constant trial. A people who had not only survived their own chaos, but had thrived because of it. The Directorate was not convinced. All species fight wars, one official argued. All species face disasters. What makes them different? Talvek read the latest message from the station before answering. What makes them different is that they do not fear these things. They expect them. Conflict, disaster, betrayal. These are not foreign to humans. They are normal, and that makes them very, very dangerous. Meanwhile, the crew of the Odyssey had noticed the shift. Ramirez gathered her officers in the dim light of the strategy room. They're learning about us, she said, but the more they learn, the less they understand. To them, our history must look like madness. Patel gave a faint smile. Maybe that's our advantage. Empires grow complacent in order. We grew strong in chaos. Hale leaned forward, his voice low. If they keep digging, eventually they'll realize they can't control us. What happens then? Ramirez paused, considering. Then they'll have to choose. Either accept us as equals or treat us as a threat. Silence settled over the room. The choice, they all knew, would not be made lightly. Back on the station, one final report arrived from a veteran field agent. His words were stark. They wear calm smiles, but beneath them is something I cannot name. They are not reckless, but neither are they afraid. They remind me of predators that have learned patience. If we mistake them for prey, we will regret it. Governor Talvek closed the file, his thoughts heavy. The humans had passed every test, resisted every ploy, and turned surveillance itself into a mirror reflecting their resilience. What began as curiosity was becoming unease. And unease in the Empire had a way of spiraling into fear. In the grand chambers of the Imperial Council, the debate was fierce. The vaulted hall, lined with banners of countless conquered worlds, echoed with voices that had rarely disagreed, so openly. Governors, admirals, and dignitaries stood divided, all speaking about the same unexpected problem: humanity. Governor Talvek presented the intelligence reports with deliberate caution. Hollow screens displayed fragments of Earth's history, conflicts spanning continents, technological leaps achieved in decades, resilience in the face of near self-extinction. The council listened, some skeptical, others visibly unsettled. They entered our empire uninvited, growled Admiral Voskar, his armored frame towering. They should have been subdued immediately, yet here we are, speaking of them as if they are equals. We must not allow this seed to grow. Across the chamber, High Scholar Trenell raised a hand. And yet, Admiral, subduing them is not so simple. You've read the same reports. They thrive in conflict. What you call chaos, they call history. To strike them may only make them stronger. The chamber filled with murmurs. The Empire had grown used to predictability. Young civilizations were typically eager to bow for protection or were swiftly crushed when they resisted. Humanity fit neither mold, and that unsettled even the most hardened officials. One governor suggested containment. Close their access, monitor their ships, limit their spread. If we keep them small, they cannot become dangerous. Another, more pragmatic voice countered, containment breeds rebellion, and what rebellion means to humans. The speaker trailed off, but the implication was clear. If humans truly rose against the Empire, they would not stop until one side was ashes. Governor Talvek finally spoke, his tone deliberate. We have a choice before us, to treat them as adversaries, risking a conflict we may not understand, or to treat them as allies, uncertain of what kind of partner they would become. Both paths carry danger. The council recessed without consensus, the debate echoing through every political channel of the Empire. Meanwhile, aboard the Odyssey, the crew had already sensed the tension. Commander Ramirez studied the shifting patrol patterns of Imperial ships near the station, noting their increased presence. To her, it was the quiet sign of preparation, though whether for alliance or suppression remained unclear. She gathered her senior officers in the dimly lit conference room. They're split, Ramirez explained, her voice steady but tight. Half of them want to push us out. The other half wants to keep us close. That means they don't know what we'll do next, and that's power. Dr. Chen adjusted his glasses, leaning forward. Uncertainty works both ways. If they act rashly, we could be cornered. If we show too much strength, we could provoke fear. It's a knife's edge. Marcus Hale crossed his arms. Then maybe we should sharpen the knife ourselves. Show them that we're not to be cornered. If they respect strength, let's give them a glimpse. Patel shook his head. Strength without context looks like threat. We need something subtler, something that shows resilience without painting a target on our backs. Ramirez listened, weighing their words carefully. Finally, she spoke. We prepare, quietly. If they come as allies, we're ready to meet them halfway. If they come as enemies, we make sure the first blow doesn't break us. Her words carried a weight the crew understood well. Humanity had lived through centuries of uncertainty before. Diplomacy that danced on fragile truces, wars that tested survival, disasters that reshaped their world. This was not new ground, just a larger stage. Back within the Empire, not all waited for consensus. Behind closed doors, admirals spoke of fleet deployments. Intelligence directors whispered of deep infiltration. Scholars and governors convened secret discussions about what might happen if humanity became too influential, and through it all, a single thread bound them. Fear. Not fear of what the humans had done, but fear of what they might do. Talvek, watching, from his office, wrote in his private journal, a habit rare among governors. His words were simple yet heavy. We thought them young, but in truth, they are old in ways we do not understand, and if we force their hand, I fear we may discover just how old they truly are. For the humans, the Empire's turmoil was opportunity. For the Empire, humanity was becoming a storm on the horizon. Neither yet realized how quickly that storm would break. The tension that had been building for weeks finally cracked, not with a grand declaration of war, but with a single, avoidable mistake. A convoy of human supply vessels was making its way to the Odyssey. The small fleet carried food, replacement, parts, and families eager to see their explorers again. They followed every protocol outlined by the Empire, transmitting their routes and maintaining contact. But on the outer rim of the sector, an Imperial patrol intercepted them. The lead Imperial, Captain, young and eager to impress, had grown frustrated with the Council's indecision. To him, the humans were little more than arrogant newcomers who had gone unpunished for far too long. Without authorization, he ordered the convoy halted. When the human freighters hesitated, his flagship fired warning shots. The result was catastrophic. One freighter, hit in its fuel array, ignited in a blinding burst. Debris scattered across the void, and hundreds of civilian lives were lost in an instant. News spread faster than any council directive could contain it. On the Odyssey, Commander Ramirez stood in the command deck, watching the grainy footage of the explosion again and again. Her jaw was set, her voice low and dangerous. They knew, she said. They knew it was a civilian convoy. They still fired. Dr. Chen placed a hand on the console, as if steadying himself. The council will claim it was an accident, that the captain acted without orders. Doesn't matter, Marcus Hale growled. His fists were clenched so tightly the knuckles whitened. Every Empire soldier flies under their banner. If they touch one of us, they touch all of us. Silence lingered before Ramirez spoke again. Transmit a message to Earth. Full priority. Let them see what happened. No edits, no excuses. Back on Earth, the footage lit a fire across the planet. Governments that had once hesitated now spoke with one voice. The United Earth Directorate convened emergency meetings, its leaders not divided but united in purpose. The message they sent back was short, direct, and absolute. No more warnings. No more hesitation. We defend our own. The Empire's council scrambled to respond. Admiral Voskar demanded an immediate show of dominance. Crush their outpost before their anger spreads. High Scholar Trenell countered with frantic pleas. If you strike them now, you will not find submission. You will find fury. And fury is what they are built for. But the galaxy was already shifting. Word of the incident reached systems far beyond the Council's walls. Other species, long silent under the Empire's shadow, whispered of the humans with awe and fear. Here was a young race that had not bowed even when blood was spilled. The Odyssey moved like a ghost through the Empire's lanes. Ramirez had ordered the crew to disappear from Imperial sensors, relying on every trick humanity had perfected in centuries of war back home. Stealth fields, decoy beacons, and improvised cloaking tactics kept them hidden. Hale paced the hangar, overseeing the arming of drones. Patel fine-tuned the sensor arrays to detect even the faintest Imperial signal. Dr. Chen coordinated with Earth's strategists, designing contingencies should the Empire retaliate with overwhelming force. But it was not vengeance Ramirez sought, not yet. Her orders were clear. We will not strike blindly. We will strike precisely when the time is right. Meanwhile, within the Empire, fear turned to fractures. The governor of a border system, fearing reprisal, refused to allow Imperial fleets through his territory. Merchant guilds began pulling investments from sectors near human contact, unwilling to risk losses. Even among the admirals, whispers spread. What if Voskar was wrong? What if this was not another upstart species, but something the Empire could not simply erase? Governor Talvek, once cautious, now stood before the council with grim conviction. You have awakened them. You do not understand what that means. To you, this was a mistake. To them, it is memory. And humans do not forget their dead. In the void, the humans prepared, not just for defense, but for what came after. Ramirez stared at the hollow display of Imperial fleets, her eyes cold. They wanted to test us, she said quietly. Now they'll learn the truth. No one crosses into human space uninvited. And if they force us to strike, it won't just be their ships that vanish, it will be their certainty. The crew said nothing. They didn't need to. The spark had been lit, and the storm was already on its way. The Empire had faced rebellions before. Entire species had tried to defy its will, and every one of them had been crushed, their cultures folded into the greater machine or erased entirely. But what came from humanity was not rebellion. It was precision. It was inevitability. 3. Retaliation did not arrive as a grand armada charging in plain sight. No banners, no declarations, no challenge of honor. Instead, Imperial fleets began vanishing. One patrol disappeared without a distress call. A supply line went dark. Stations once teeming with activity suddenly lay silent, their lights extinguished, and their docks empty. To the Empire, it was as if the void itself had grown fangs. On the Odyssey, Ramirez stood at the center of the command deck as reports flowed in. Third Fleet, gone without a trace. Mining colony, evacuated before dawn. All assets seized. Admiral Voskar's forward base. Burned to slag. No survivors. Each report carried the same eerie detail. No witnesses, no broadcasts, no desperate final transmissions. Whatever. Humanity struck. It was erased completely, as though it had never existed. Marcus Hale leaned back in his chair with a grim smile. They thought we'd line up and fight fair. They forgot. We never fight fair. Dr. Chen, though troubled, admitted, softly, they're beginning to understand. For the first time in centuries, they are the ones who feel hunted. The council chamber of the Empire was in chaos. Dozens of governors shouted over one another, their voices filled with panic. You said they were primitives. They are ghosts. No force moves like this, not even our own elite fleets. Admiral Voskar, once so certain, now stood silent. The footage from his devastated base had reached every corner of the chamber. A single human drone, drifting quietly. After the destruction, its transponder broadcasting one chilling message. We warned you. The words were in every Imperial tongue, translated with surgical precision. There was no mistaking the intent, but it was not sheer destruction that unsettled the Empire most. It was what came after. In sectors where Imperial patrols withdrew, human envoys arrived. They made no demands for tribute, no threats of conquest. They spoke to the species who had lived under Imperial rule, asking only, "What do you need to be free?" Some alien leaders, skeptical at first, soon realized the truth. The humans did not come to replace the Empire's throne. They came to dismantle it. Systems that had long whispered of independence began to openly resist. And wherever Imperial, fleets tried to stamp them out, shadows of humanity's presence followed. Ramirez knew the turning point had come. We could end them, Hale urged. Burn their core worlds and scatter their fleets. They'd never rise again. But Ramirez shook her head. That's what they expect. That's what they fear. We don't need to rule them. We just need them to remember. She ordered their forces to halt direct strikes. Instead, humans revealed the captured records of Imperial atrocities, broadcasting them across the stars. For every fleet erased, 1,000 truths emerged, truths that the Empire had buried for centuries. Dr. Chen called it a war of memory. Patel called it a reckoning. Ramirez called it justice. On Earth, the Directorate issued its final message to the Galactic Council. We are not conquerors. We are not your subjects. We are humanity. Cross into our space uninvited, and you will not return. But if you wish peace, we will honor it. Choose carefully. The words spread like wildfire. Across countless star systems, the Empire's iron grip loosened. Not because every fleet was destroyed, but because fear and doubt had corroded their unity. The myth of the Empire's invincibility was gone, and in its place rose the legend of humanity. Governor Talvek, once cautious, stood in his own chambers watching the human broadcasts. His aides asked if he feared humanity would come for his world next. He shook his head slowly. No, he said. They do not seek to rule us. They only seek to remind us that no power is eternal. They are the storm that passes and the warning that lingers. On the Odyssey, Ramirez allowed herself a rare moment of quiet. She gazed out at the stars, her reflection cast across the glass. We didn't plan this, she whispered. But maybe the galaxy needed it. Hale stepped up beside her, his voice low. And what about us? What do we do now? Ramirez's eyes stayed on the endless dark. What we always do. We explore. We endure. And if anyone tries to drag us into chains again, she let the silence finish the thought. In that, silence was the promise of humanity's legacy, unyielding, untamed, unforgettable. The galaxy would remember.